This is Create the Next from ProCFO Partners, where every week we explore strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help today's businesses put their financial picture in context.
Welcome back to Create the Next. I'm Chris Bintliff, and I'm joined back again today with Gerry Quinn. And Gerry, today we're talking about business in Long Island, and I'm curious about your thoughts on doing business in Long Island, and I'm really sort of interested in maybe your journey, how that started. So talk us through a little bit, just what's your professional experience, how long you've been in Long Island, and kind of what's been your trajectory of professionalism over there?
Sure. Well, number one, thank you, Chris, for having me once again. Always good to have these conversations and learn the bits and pieces that we do.
I agree.
I've actually lived most of my life on Long Island. Grew up on Eastern Long Island, actually, which is a distance from the city, but started actually off my career at a defense company, which at one point was a big piece of the Long Island economy. The defense and commercial aviation had a strong history on Long Island, with Grumman being a big player there, and the lunar module and a number of other things historically happening there. Over the last 30 years or so, actually, for my entire career, that's kind of changed, and the economy's diversified quite a bit away from that.
So when you think about, I don't know, what that's been for Long Island, because Long Island can be an insular sort of area. People can, as you do, they can stay there their whole lives. They can grow, building relationships and businesses and whatever. How does that, I don't know, how does that change? Do you feel like there's a lot of sort of old guard and business as usual in that way? Or is there a lot of new guard that's kind of coming in? And what's that juxtaposition like?
I think it's an interesting juxtaposition. I think that's exactly the right word for it. There are something like 3 million people on Long Island, not counting Queens and Brooklyn. And a lot of people on Long Island, because we're in the shadow of Manhattan and New York City, take the Long Island Railroad, go and commute to the city and Wall Street and all those jobs, whatever. But the Long Island community has kind of been that was one of the original suburbs, Levittown being one of the first planned communities on the island back in the 50s. And it's a small community. It's a small community of 3 million people. Is that word a juxtaposition?
That's a small community of 3 million people. That's the title for the podcast. How does that change, or what business challenges does that represent or present or create?
Well, again, there's that continued diversity. Long Island also has a strong history of innovation with Brookhaven Lab and Cold Spring Harbor Lab. So they cover ground that goes from particle accelerators to DNA and genome sequencing in the last 20 years, still having that base of aviation, manufacturing, whatever, and new companies coming in all the time. Stony Brook University and the universities are there. It's a very educated population as well. And so there's always new and changing ideas. There's entrepreneurs with great new, change the world ideas.
So when you think about Long Island, is there a demographic or even an age demographic that seems best represented? So you just mentioned manufacturing. I'm imagining the family business where we've been around for 2, 3, 4 generations. We've been in the same building since 1900 something. And then you've got, as you just pointed out, this kind of cutting edge med tech, probably some incubators in that realm, and back to that idea of juxtaposition. How does that old guard or these old sort of family businesses, how do they sit right next door to and alongside the 20-something startup who's gonna change the world? How does that change business and the culture of business at large? Do you feel like in this small community of 3 million people?
I think it makes for an interesting mix and great diversity, but they do stand side by side alongside each other. Long Island's really not a place where you'll find the Fortune 500 headquarters building, or even a lot of Fortune 500 main businesses. It's not a place for a manufacturing business, but those privately held, mid-sized and startup companies, that family business that's to the second, third generation that continues to grow. And you'll have some that are continuing almost as that lifestyle business, but businesses, even those family businesses, still have to continue to grow, still have to continue down that life cycle of a business. You do see those private equity companies coming in and picking up those third generation family businesses.
What's interesting is it's not unlike conversations we've had on this podcast about Philadelphia, which is another colonial outpost. It's another, it's been here as long as the country has been here. And so you're going to have a different sense of culture, of economics, of even sort of familial representation than you will out here on the West Coast where, we're new school. Chicago, same kind of thing. You've got this old school kind of mentality that butts right up against today's fast and digital.
Well, particularly maybe the timing for this podcast being just after 9/11. We're New Yorkers, man. New York tough. Their resilience, the idea of even now with COVID and the pandemic over the last year or so, those people that were commuting to the city that have had so much has changed, and it continues to change what the economy is.
What a great sort of reminder of who we're dealing with, and as Gerry just pointed out, we are just days away from the 20th anniversary of 9/11 as we're talking about that. How does that toughness, that sort of resiliency show up in business, especially if you put your CFO hat on for a minute and you're talking to that old guard, I'm the third generation CEO or whatever. What are the dynamics of that relationship that are unique?
I don't know that it's unique to Long Island, but that idea of thinking, a hardened New Yorker, this is the city that never sleeps. All those, you make it there, you can make it anywhere. Makes those conversations. These are business people who can play with the best.
Yeah.
And those growing businesses, these entrepreneurs have ideas and ways of doing things and change the world kind of stuff.
Is that new school welcome, or do they kind of have to prove themselves? Do they kind of have to earn their stripes?
It's New York. I think you got to earn your stripes. Is it welcome? Is it? You certainly have to earn that respect. But it certainly can be earned. The sharp business person gets it done. What we can do is with ProCFO Partners and our CFOs and our team is brings that skill set, that experience to a lot of these companies. To a lot of these, again, it's connecting those pieces together. That great new change the world idea still needs that experience, and having lived through some of the life cycles, there's kind of been there, done that in some cases.
That's a great point, and I think too. Do you agree that there's a built-in credibility component when it's not some valuable, very talented person who's from Portland, Oregon, coming in to sort of give some advice to this third generation Long Island guy, or even the startup, but instead it's I'm a Long Island guy, I get it. Do you feel like there's sort of a camaraderie that's built in, or even a trust factor that's kind of built in?
Oh, sure. It's it's even in the accent, right?
That's true.
And that the Long Island economy is not an insular economy. We're selling internationally. These companies that are growing, yes, there's a large population in that tri-state area, but these up-and-coming companies are looking to distribute and be international.
Let's talk about those up and coming. What do you see as the future? What's the next decade? What's 20 years from now? How is business going to be different or changed, do you feel like, in Long Island?
Oh, you still go back to, and maybe this is just a feeling of what the last year and a half has been, is that hybrid work environment. That people working, if not home all the time or from home part-time, and people having changed their priorities in their lifestyle and what's happened over the last year and a half. Another thing about Long Island is it's a really great place to live. Okay. Beautiful beaches, a lot of tourism, shadow of the city, things to do. Having that access. Long Island and New York is easily accessible with the number of airports, trains, public transportation that's here. So it certainly changes the business environment, and where it'll be in 10 years that's a tough question, man.
Do you feel like some of those incubators, some of that cutting edge med tech or technology companies, the things that are kind of putting their footprints in now, are they edging out some of the old guard, that old manufacturing, those old 3 and 4 generations, or is everybody finding their place and they're all going to find a way to thrive and survive and keep doing what they do for the next generation or two?
It's going to be that mix. Not everyone's going to thrive and survive, but those companies that are doing the right thing, that are following best practices and the right principles and stuff, and those new technologies, whether it be neuroscience or everything going on with DNA. I mean, Long Island has a vital generic pharma business and growing. It's continues to grow, and things like COVID testing. It's amazing where some of the technology transfer has led us in a short period of time.
It's fascinating stuff. Gerry Quinn, lifelong Long Islander, thanks for sharing some time with us today. It was really interesting to get to know you a little bit more, but also to get to know business in Long Island. I love the idea that it's kind of this outpost of NYC, so that you can do the business there, but it's also its own, OG original kind of place with its own culture and personality. The small town of 3 million people. That's great. You've been really insightful and generous with your time today. Thanks for sharing it with us.
Thank you, Chris. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to our subscribers. Consider becoming one today. Visit ProCFOPartners.com for more strategies and ideas for financial management and growth to help you put your business's financial picture in context.